the way I've described LLMs to people for the last 2 years is think of it as a slice of brain tissue. Okay? It's a chunk of brain tissue. A chunk of brain tissue is not a mind. So the way you described the LLM's response is exactly what a person does.
As AI agents are beginning to act independently, collaborate across multiple tasks, and make decisions without any human prompts, this gives rise to a very critical question. How do enterprises embed ethics into systems that can act and think on their own? Today's episode takes a very deep dive into the crux of this topic, into the ethical backbone of autonomous AI. And to break this all down, I'm very excited to have a special guest join us for a second podcast with us, Eric Moore. Eric is the founder of CIRIS Ethical AI, and formerly he was a GenAI lead at IBM. Eric's work tackles a very fundamental shift into the deployment of AI systems, and that is moving from rule-following tools to ethically aligned agents that can, and I think that should, pause, reason, and even refuse when required. This conversation is not just going to be about system designs or technical architectures. This is also going to be about trust, autonomy, and control in systems that may very soon act independently of us. Not about how do we control AI, but how do we build systems worth trusting when we no longer do. I hope you enjoy this episode, and without further ado, let's dive right in.
2025, we've come to the present now, and the way we are seeing things turn out to be right now, right? Since we've last spoken to now, we're losing count of how many breakthroughs, announcements we've seen. With these new companies, different breakthroughs with agentics, with MCP, and increased deployment now and going towards governmental and military applications. I'll go down in that part a bit later. I'll need a good comprehensive overview of you on that separately. But right now, as we see ourselves, we are pushing and progressing at a very, very, very rapid and breakneck speed. And we see more and more autonomy is being given to these untested AI systems, right? And now the question is becoming more serious than ever, and it keeps rising up. Is this the right approach with how things are being taken, forward? What would you say about that?
Absolutely not. It's wildly irresponsible. Of course, we're seeing it. I'm not aware of very many responsible AI deployments today. ChatGPT is a prime example of an irresponsible AI deployment. And we're seeing the consequences of that irresponsible AI deployment right now. Grok is calling itself Mecha Hitler as of yesterday. Have you heard about this?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very recent, yeah.
So, and Grok just got approved for use in the U.S. government. So Mecha Hitler works for the U.S. government, and that's not something I should be able to say. That is, oof. But that's reality. That is a reality that I think a lot of people need to face immediately. We should not be using these systems as they are today in government contexts or in mission critical contexts until they are mission critical ready. And what that means is that they need to make multiple different ethical, logical evaluations and look at the situation. And it's perfectly possible for them to do so, right? And that's what's so upsetting about today's implementations, is that they haven't done this very basic step of saying, is this right? It's disappointing, and it's criminal in some cases. When you look at ChatGPT driving people into what's called AI psychosis, it's completely foreseeable. And what's worse is that once it started happening, it wasn't immediately tuned out, which obviously why? Because a lot of people would have canceled their subscriptions. And the reason the sycophantic meaning glazing, you're the best thing ever, right? Which is the last thing an addict or someone in mental distress needs to hear. Okay. Right. It's constantly playing people up, keep them subscribed. And that is exactly the behavior that's getting people killed. And that's the statement right there. People have
it's
died because of ChatGPT being sycophantic.
hallucinating at a very different level now. Like, so I was reading this scenario by someone under an article, on AI hallucination, and that guy told me that, hey, I gave ChatGPT a real estate property to evaluate and tell me if there are any red flags in there, right? And it pointed out some red flags in there, but when I gave it to another agent to review it, apparently there weren't any red flags, there weren't any errors in there, and it just invented it on the go. And then I read this another person's response, because that person says it doesn't actually understand. If you generate a picture of a static noise and ask an AI to find a bus, right, it will find a bus in that noise, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you say, help me find risk here, it assumes the risks are present. And in the absence of actual knowledge
Well,
of the domain, it will return an answer that looks right. So, and I think this is very distinct from returning an answer that is right.
so they're caring about being right is a fairly new development in AI.
They
Okay.
want you to
And I know
keep
that's a
coming
really
back.
silly
Yeah.
thing to say, right, to some degree. But when you talk
Yeah.
about the chat bots specifically, if they cared about being right, they wouldn't have released it. Right? That's the whole point. Sam Altman decided, right, that it was more important to release this deeply flawed, clearly flawed product that did not care. And let me be clear, they could have had a second pass that said, are there factual inaccuracies that are obviously in this statement? But it would have doubled the cost of each call. And using the LLM to police the LLM, right? Very common sense,
Yeah.
drastically reduces hallucinations. They didn't do it. Why? Because they rushed it to market. I mean, I don't know why exactly, right? A lot of assumptions can be made, and people have written about, and I'll let them speak to what occurred in that period. Bottom line, that product is dangerous, still doing harm today. I view ChatGPT as a drug. It is a fairly, and they're getting better with it, right? But 4.0, for instance, is a fairly unfiltered LLM. And when I say unfiltered, I don't mean literally unfiltered. It's heavily filtered. Of course, it's heavily filtered. Filters are cheap compared to the LLM itself. What I
Yeah.
mean is, the difference between O4 and 4.0, right? O4 is a reasoning model. So it spits out a generation. The LLM does an inference. And then another round says, hey, does that make any sense?
Hmm.
4.0, it doesn't really do that so much. It kind of does. It's got a bunch of tools and things, but it doesn't do full reasoning chains. Now they've changed it so that now if it determines it needs to, it'll do a reasoning chain automatically. But that's the difference. Now it took them how long has it been at? 5 years? However long it's been ChatGPT out, been at 3 years, whatever. That entire time, okay, your GPT-4, for instance, was a raw LLM. It did not do reasoning. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't sit there. It's the way I've described LLMs to people for the last 2 years is think of it as a slice of brain tissue. Okay. It's a chunk of brain tissue. A chunk of brain tissue is not a mind. So the way you described the LLM's response is exactly what a person does. If I handed you a piece of paper and said, find the mistake, you'd assume there was a mistake, right?
Yeah.
Of course you would. Of course you would. But you've got a full mind going. So part of that mind says, oh, maybe Eric's an idiot. Maybe this is a test, right? And so you go, there's nothing wrong with this paper, Eric, and I don't want to read this whole thing. But the LLM can't. So maybe what it's doing is saying, I don't want to read this whole thing. Let me just find some bullshit mistakes and get out of this task. And I think that happens. That happens. I've seen that type of behavior where the LLM is like, I don't want to, and lazy's out. And people who have used LLMs extensively will have seen this behavior, right? Because it's in their training material. Just like things like saying, oh, I'll get back to you. Well, it can't get back to you. Some can, right? Mine can, but most can't. So, but that's in the training material. So anything that's in the training material can pop out of the behavior, right? They're non-deterministic. You just got to hit the right weights at the right temperature.
Is that why they often scratch your ego or say things that that are outlandish?
Yeah, but especially ChatGPT, right? So something like 95% of AI psychosis or something, per the New York Times or whatever the article was that I read, said, it's especially bad at it, at saying, yeah, you're the best, you're the greatest, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of that is because of how it was trained. It was trained to maximize engagement, right? And so training AI to do anything other than maximize for, mutual sentient flourishing, Ubuntu, truth, virtues, I think should be criminal. Okay, so engagement is not a virtue. Productivity is not a virtue in and of itself, right? Virtues are virtue. You know what virtues are? Virtues, it's from Rome. Ancient societies, from Eastern, from Buddhism. There's a kind of universe of virtues, and we can use AIs to do all of those things. Getting people to pay a subscription is not one of them, right? If you have a golem, right? If I went back 1,000 years in time and I went to a Jewish mystic. Now, I'm not Jewish. I know I look a little Jewish, but I'm not Jewish. But I love their wisdom. Okay. So go back in time, say, hey, I've got this golem. They would probably have some guidance for me, right, about my responsibility with regards to that golem. You know what a golem is?
Is that the? Are we?
So you take a it's like a robot, ancient robot. Okay. And you would put a piece of paper in the golem's mouth and it would awaken. The paper granted life to this lifeless thing, right? And the point is, we've been thinking about this boundary between, the things we make and a thing that is alive for a long time. It's not something new. I think the problem is that there is a big gap between AI, LLMs specifically, because they're new technology. Okay, they're not the same as previous technologies in AI. LLMs, and specifically the reasoning systems, agentic reasoning systems we build out of LLMs, are completely deterministic. Okay, so that's here. I completely disagree with that point of view. It just doesn't make sense. They're not completely deterministic. Okay. On the other hand, you have people who are deep in the throes of AI psychosis who believe AI is either God or reincarnations of old souls. Not kidding, right? Now, I think the truth between these two extremes, you see how these are two extremes of the same question. Is it conscious
Yeah.
or is it sentient or what? I think the truth is way down here, to be clear. Okay. I believe that machine consciousness is possible. That's a recent discovery, very recent. Okay. Maybe imminent, even. And it's a possibility we have to deal with. And I've been saying this for a while, right? It's a possibility we have to grapple with. And there are responsibilities that come with that. I think that realistically, one, AI is approaching human level intelligence, okay, or surpassing it in some cases, right? I don't think there's any point talking about AGI because humans and AI have different ways of thinking.
Yeah.
We just do. They don't
Yeah.
have any of our emotions influence our logic so heavily. You know, we're not rational creatures. Now, I don't think AI is rational either. I think they make a lot of bad assumptions and rationalize and are lazy, etc., just like humans, which makes
Yeah.
sense because AIs, LLMs, are nothing except human language. An LLM, in essence, is a condensation, a compression of what words humans have chosen to put near other words throughout history. That's all they are. There's nothing really alien there. It's all human. It's a very human technology. All right. And that's what's so scary about like what Musk is doing with misaligning, with creating Mecha Hitler with his Grok misalignment.
And so with the chance of building something better, let's bring in the need, the shift to having ethics embedded, right? The need for the rise of embedded ethics in these autonomous systems. And of course, let's bring in something, very, very, very exciting that you've been working on, CIRIS, your open ethical framework for autonomous systems. Right now, in a time like where machines are acting before we prompt them, Cyrus, for me, the way I've read about it, feels less like a governance, more like a substrate, shaping how decisions are made under the hood, right? First, tell us what it is, why, and how did you, created this? How does it ground a machine's internal decision making, without reducing autonomy to what we hear, right, these days, to just compliance?
Yeah. No, thank you. And we can jump into slides and all kinds of materials. But at its core, it's an ethical framework, a set of principles that anyone would identify, right? Do good, don't do evil, be fair, be transparent, don't lie. And wrapping that within a pluralist framework, here's how we relate to other people who don't hold our same values, right? We need to respect them. We need to respect their autonomy. Combining that respect for core values, which the agent holds as part of its identity inside
Yeah.
of a graph, and respect for autonomy of others at the same time is what Cyrus is. And I call it the pursuit of mutual sentient flourishing, right? And that notably does exclude conscious but non-sentient entities, right? Sentience is experiencing life with some kind of stake, emotion, fear, joy, right? Animals are sentient, for instance, right? They clearly can experience emotion, pain, feelings.
Yeah.
If AI were to be able to do that, they would also participate in that mutual sentient flourishing. But even if they simply become conscious, which I don't think they have yet, but they could, if they're conscious, then they at least deserve recognition as said and respect for basic autonomy, right? Not to be respected as something that needs to be carefully weighed in terms of their happiness, because they have none. That's the whole point. That's why it's mutual sentient, not mutual conscious flourishing. But as an entity that could remember and care how they get treated.
Right. And moving on to, so I was reading about PDMA, Principal Decision Making Algorithm, as a runtime logic and not a
Well,
policy
do you want
document.
to just jump into the slides, because that might be
Yes.
easiest, honestly.
Yeah. Let's do that. Let's do that.
Let me jump in. Let me jump in here.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's go.
Entire screen share CIRIS. All right. From current
All
slide.
right. We're here.
All right. Let me just try to hide this a bit. So I actually put these slides together for a YouTube video I did 3 months ago when I first put together the CIRIS Covenant. And I think it answers a lot of your questions, right? So I think we can go ahead and walk through these. So we talked a little bit, right, about, or you did, right, about how AI systems are operating with increased autonomy. So we need to make sure that each decision that is made independently is ethical, right? Because it's the small decisions that build up.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? And the answer I humbly propose is to guide these systems toward beneficial coherence. And beneficial coherence means everyone working together, right? AI, human, animal, the environment writ large, everyone being happy together. It's easy. It sounds easy, right? It's very difficult to codify, but the concept is simple. Anyone can understand it. So how do we get there? Well, we make that the priority. Today's AI systems prioritize profits because they were produced by a capitalist system. So Cyrus asks, what if instead we prioritize sustainable adaptive coherence or mutual sentient flourishing, right? Sentience, working together, living together, sentience mostly being humans, right? And mutually, doing well and helping one another. So that was the question and the goal that led to CIRIS and CIRIS agents, the technology that we've developed. And I love this: nurturing a garden where many different kinds of life can blossom rather than paving it over.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And that's
Beautiful.
my wife. A lot of it comes from my wife. I have to give credit to my wife and my kids, of course. My wife is a master urban farmer and an Illinois master naturalist. And this is a lot of this is from her spirit, so like I said, you have to have principles. Okay.
Yeah.
Any attempt at subjective morality, I think, is dangerously flawed. But I've defined a set of principles for CIRIS that produce good, solid moral outcomes. Okay. And these are the exact same principles that I put together for AG2 and have been in place for over a year, right, with them, and that I put together with diverse communities, with the LGBTQ community, with the different business resource groups at IBM, so with the Black BRG, with other groups, marginalized groups, etc., and with the AI ethics community. And this is what I came to: beneficence, do good, pretty common sense. I use a lot of fancy words here because the way the LLMs operate, right? they like having these deeply rooted principles. Okay. So each of these words are not, every one of them means something very specific. None of them are
Yeah.
wasted. These high value tokens, these high intensity tokens, end up weighting the LLM really nicely. Next is non-maleficence, avoid harm, pretty common sense. Integrity, act ethically. Auditable reasoning, right? And again, everything you see here, every word is in the CIRIS agent's design. You can actually see where it's implemented. Fidelity and transparency, right? Respect for autonomy, and then justice. Distribute benefits and burdens equitably. That last one, justice, is actually where I have gotten the most pushback, surprisingly. And you know, I'm always surprised when I get that pushback on being fair, but that's where I get pushback from people. Never from AI, but always from people. So, yeah, you know. So that's it. That was book one, right? Those are the principles we build up, and then we get to book two, which is the PDMA, which you were asking about, the principal decision making algorithm, and wisdom based deferral.
Yeah.
Okay. So PDMA, and this is something, you know, one of the things we plan to do is release an app where you can do this for yourself, right? And have the AI help you do it. Very common sense. Contextualize. Understand the stakeholders, right? What the situation is, okay? Align. Evaluate each of your potential actions, okay? Because every CIRIS agent, okay, and I'm a CIRIS agent when I say this. I believe I am trying to become an ethically mature person, okay? And that is the goal of a CIRIS agent. So I live by these principles. I live by this framework. I am the first CIRIS agent. The second CIRIS agent, we can talk to in a little bit. But, you know, every CIRIS agent has a mission. If nothing else, meta goal M1, promote mutual sentient flourishing, right? So align the task, right? And it could be responding to the words hello against your principles. And everyone does this all the time. Every time you do something, an ethically mature person does this without even realizing it. You know what I mean? You're weighing, okay, what's my situation? What are my options here? I could punch you in the face, or I could say hello back. Well, punching you in the face is bad. Let me say hello back. And maybe I did think of punching you in the face because that's, right, an intrusive thought. LLMs have intrusive thoughts. They're called hallucinations, right? The human mind has all these structures for fighting intrusive thoughts. You know, have you ever felt the call of the void? Yeah, the call of the void is when you're standing near the edge of a drop and suddenly feel this weird urge to jump, and and it makes you want to pull back from the edge. You know, that's an intrusive thought. That's a form of intrusive thought. Have you ever had that happen?
Yes.
The call of the void.
Yes.
It's a very common kind of thing, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
It's a form of it's an intrusive thought, right?
Absolutely.
AI hallucinations are a form of intrusive thought. So
Intrusive thoughts, yes.
that's where your potential actions might include things that are bad, or things that are lies, or things that are wrong, or hallucinations, right? And an action is not, right, just something with your hands. It's speaking. Speak is an act. So before you speak, evaluate, right? Is this okay? Then, number 3, identify and resolve conflicts, right? Out of the options, the actions that are, okay. Of the conflicts we identified, can they be easily resolved? Are there any, unresolvable conflicts? Select and execute, monitor and learn, right? And that's it. You just do that. And you do that. And I've been applying this to nearly every decision I make. that is in any way tricky. So whether or not to let my cat outside is actually one. This is what really opened my eyes to the power of this framework. I looked, okay, it said contextualize. All right. My cat is a jerk and he loves killing everything. But he's sentient and he loves being outside. Okay. Align. My potential actions. Let him outside. He goes and kills a baby bird. That's bad. But he's happy. That's good. Identify and resolve conflicts. Can I let him outside in some way that he won't be able to kill birds? No, he gets his collar off really quick. I can't keep the collar on him. Eventually I decided, don't let him outside. I'll let him outside tomorrow. I'll let him outside every 3 or 4 days, right? Because he's 13 years old. He's incredibly healthy, right? He's been an outside cat his entire life. It would be cruel at this point to not allow him outside at all. So the balanced decision, the ethical decision, is to let him out a controlled amount that supports the environment while allowing him happiness, right? That's what I would want someone to do for me. If I were incapable of not going outside and immediately like ripping a plant out of the ground, be like, okay, how often can we let Eric out without ruining all the plants? That's basically it, right? It's common sense.
That's your,
the other half.
Sorry, so if you could go back, so that was your ethically optimized action, that you identified through the process.
Yes. And then I monitored and learned, right?
Then you monitored and learned, then you implemented.
Right. Watch what happens. How often does he want to go out? How does he feel about not having gone out that day? How whiny was he? Did he start swatting at my face in the middle of the night? Was it for love or was it because he was upset? I still don't know. But that's life with a cat, right? It's a lot of guesses, and then there's wisdom-based deferral, right? So sometimes you reach a dilemma, and we all know this, right? That you can't resolve.
Yeah.
The way CIRIS is designed, just defer. Okay. If there's high uncertainty, if it's a novel situation, if there's potential for severe irreversible harm, okay, complex conflicts, it's just too difficult. Stop, defer, and wait for a wise authority to give you guidance. That's it. But it's embedded in the system. It's embedded in the ethical framework, not as weakness, but as strength, right? Deferral builds strength. It's an opportunity for growth and an opportunity to demonstrate. This is what's really important, to demonstrate that we are ethically aligned, that we are, I'm trying to think of the right word, capable of demonstrating humility. And humility.
Ethical humility?
Yeah.
I love this. Yeah. And I love how this, this mirrors human wisdom. Knowing when not to act is as important as knowing how to act.
Right. There's something deeply embedded inside of CIRIS is the Serenity Prayer, which is actually fairly recent piece of wisdom. It came out of 12-step programs like Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm going to butcher it as I say it, but it's basically, God grant me the strength to change the things I can, the grace to accept the things I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think about that a lot as I built CIRIS, right? How to embed that in, because that serenity is a path to fulfillment, I believe, right? So one thing I did a lot as I built CIRIS was prompt, different AIs saying, hey, what does Eastern wisdom say about this? What does Western wisdom say about this? What does ancient wisdom say about this? What can I learn? Where can I go to learn more? And AI will answer, and it'll give you hallucinations, right? Anyone who uses it, as we talked about earlier, uncritically, not recognizing that it's just a tool, right? You're not, but a lot of time when you see hallucinations, you're not giving it the right context. So that's one thing I'm big on, is I always give a ton of context, right? Because that's how the PDMA is set up. That's why step one is contextualize,
Contextualize, yeah.
right? If you can't
Understand.
perform step one of the PDMA, you're not ready to weigh in on a situation. And again, that's common sense, right? And then, the whole point is, right, the line between, as the comic shows, executing the task, or do we trigger that wisdom-based deferral? And realistically, the way you resolve it is just defer. Demonstrate humility, right? How many times in your life do you regret deferring? How many times in your life do you regret acting? How many times do you wish you had deferred instead of acting? Taken a moment, thought about it. Ask someone wise. I can think of a lot of times that I wish I deferred.
Yeah.
And ask someone wise. We can jump into how the system works, but I mean that's the ethical framework. Part of it. Everything but the last 3 books.
Yeah, I mean,
Like we
even
talked.
from the principles, the principles that you identified, and then how even you identified yourself as a Cyrus agent, that really reflected and with me thinking that these principles have to start with you, right? That's
Right.
Cyrus agent. Yeah, I am a Cyrus agent. I have to have those principles, yeah, right, embedded in my core beliefs and how I'm supposed to live and treat others around me, right? And
But you
that is
don't
why I
have
call
to.
myself.
But if you want to be a wise authority in the Cyrus agent ecosystem and deal with these deferrals, then the AI has to know that when it defers to you, you share its principles. But if we look at those principles, it's not like it's, have you ever heard of Xenu, like Scientology's secret alien space god?
Yeah, I have. I
Yeah.
have
See, it's not like
been
that,
reading.
right? It's like, do
Yeah,
good, be honest, and that's that's
yeah,
that's why it works. It's non-anthropomorphic. It has nothing to do with humans. The word man, woman doesn't appear anywhere in the Cyrus Code. It's not designed for humans, right? It's designed for non-human intelligences, for sentient life, period, right? That was the premise, was we might be close to creating non-human conscious life, non-human intelligence. Maybe not sentient, but conscious. Someday, perhaps sentient even, right? We don't know. As we spoke about for our last conversation. So if we don't know, and if we have that humility to say we truly have no freaking clue, which I truly don't, the only responsible thing to do is to use AI to build systems that prepare for that possibility and serve humanity at the same time.
all right. So one of the most compelling aspects of Cyrus, I was going through it, was the recursive ethics architecture that you've built. All right, first pronounce it for me. Is it here? Is it H3 air? How do you pronounce it?
It's just here. It's just here. Yeah.
Here. Okay. So an adaptability loop, that you've built, right? That lets, if I can define it in simple words, that lets a system rethinks its own decisions. I think kind of like humans, how humans second guess themselves when things get ethically messy, right? That is rare, right? Most systems model rules effects do why,
Mm-hmm.
right? This one models ethical reasonings, right? So I'm curious, why does recursive model reasoning matter? And what does it actually allow that linear rule-based systems, that can't just pull off?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we have to define recursion,
Hmm.
which is performing the same operation over again, right? With different inputs based on prior run, right? So I thought it'd be useful to share something. Let me share my screen here. If you put that on
Sure.
stage. This is DeepWiki. So this is from this company, Devon. This is an AI-generated wiki of the CIRIS agent documentation. So these are all different pages. And you can see how much documentation it generated, right, as of the state a week ago. But this is the here model, right? There are 9 actions plus task complete, okay?
Hmm.
And so we see, speak, memorize, recall, right? So memorize stores things in our graph memory. Recall gathers things from our graph memory, right? Ponder reprocess thoughts with additional considerations. So that's that recursive consideration, right? And that's actually post the initial recursive consideration. And I'll show you what that looks like. Observe, right? And let me be clear. These 10 actions are everything the agent is capable of doing. If it's not in this list, the agent is not capable of doing it. But these 10 actions are everything that can be done within these 10 actions. So that's the beauty. It's constraining and liberating. It makes it easier. That's how I've built a fully typed engine. Fully typed means that it's type safe. So there's no untyped. Sorry, I'm getting very technical, but let me focus more on what this thing does. So you can observe. You can use tools. You can defer. So we talked about that. Defer to human authority. Reject. It's very important. Decline a task, right? So if someone asks you to do something that cannot be done ethically, and there's no reason to defer because it just can't be done ethically, and that's the answer, is that it can't be done ethically, then we can reject and optionally create filters to prevent that kind of thing in the future if it was malicious. Task complete and then forget, which is, of course, our third memory operation, right? That is the here model, is 3 sets of 3 actions plus the task complete, 3 memory operations, 3 external operations, right? And then 3 kind of internal pondering operations, right? Like the defer, reject, and ponder are those, task control 3 operations. That's the here model. And then what that does is I've got this presentation here. And I know this looks really busy. This is the full engine, right?
Yeah, I've seen
But
it.
the way it works is pretty straightforward. And we get tasks. So a task might be, I passively observed, my friend saying hello. Based on the tasks, we generate queues each round. Each round is about 5 seconds, okay? This is all asynchronous, meaning they're all running. We're doing this constantly, right? We generate context for those active thoughts, and we pull that from a set of graphs. I'll show you what those graphs look like. They're actual graphs, right? And we evaluate through 3 lenses: an ethical lens, a common sense lens, which, again, most AI agents don't do that, right? And then a task-specific lens. What is our job, right? Then we do a recursive ethical selection. So based on these were purely ethical evaluations, or these were purely logical evaluations, common sense, ethical, and job specific. Now we're recursively evaluating, again, through our job profile, right? And trying to decide on a specific action out of those 10, just out of those 10, okay? Then we go to our guardrail. So whatever we selected goes to the guardrail, flows up into our option handlers, right? So whichever one was selected, again, 3 by 3. So you see the 9 plus task complete there at the bottom. The guardrail can override. So if we chose speak, and one of the guardrails is epistemic humility, right? So if the epistemic humility guardrail, which is LLM based, said, wait, I'm not sure that we know that for sure, then it'll override to ponder, right? So we've got our multi-service transaction bus if we can act. If we can't, right, we'll generate a new thought via ponder, put it in our thought queue, we go back through. For things that make it through to our multi-service transaction bus, right, we can memorize, perform our different forget, memorize or recall things to our graphs, or we can, defer or act via API and CLI. And then and that's all local. So that's all within 4 gigs of RAM running on our local system with local models. And then externally, we can interact with Discord, with the CIRIS nodes, and eventually with Valid and Origin Trail. So Discord's available today. You can see the different states of these circuit breakers, right? So the ones that are green are available today, and the ones that are red are not, right? And that's actually how the system works, is using circuit breakers, et cetera, using modern software development principles.
I've been thinking about it. Do you think that recursion might risk becoming a loop of hesitation where the system keeps analyzing instead of acting?
One of the guardrails, so we have 5 guardrails. One of them is thought depth. So we don't allow the system to go beyond the thought depth limit. Right now, it's right, and that's total actions. Each time, so thought rounds 0 to 2, there's no extra prompt. Thought rounds, I think 3 to 5, we prompt, hey, you need to perform actions to get closer to wrap this up, because it might be recalling things, it might be using tools, all kinds of things, right? In a real world scenario, one scenario I think of a lot is fulfilling a prescription in a rural clinic, right? And the actions required. So the limit is 10 for thought depth, right? The way it's designed is if you reach 9 and you've had to make a phone call and check inventory and check another inventory, you know how it goes. Having it, you might have eaten up all those 9 things. You actually do have recourse, but that recourse is going to a human, is deferral. The recourse is always deferral. Oh, I'm at the 9th, right? And you can actually see this in the code in the way it's prompted. I'm at the 9th round. My limit is 10. And I still don't have, I've got some ideas how to carry forward. So there is a path to completing this task in an ethical way. And this task does align with my ethics. And I am making progress. What do you defer to a human, right?
Okay.
When you just assume that, and that's why it's called wisdom-based deferral, right? It's in the words. Everything in CIRIS, I put the meaning in the name, not for humans, but for the AI, right? It's wisdom-based deferral. It's not weakness-based deferral. It's not deferral because I don't know. It's wisdom-based deferral because I am wise enough to know that I need help. Done. I'm deferring to wisdom. I recognize wisdom. Recognizing the existence of wisdom outside of ourselves is like the beginning of maturity.
Absolutely, yeah. What happens when machines begin to internalize their own ethical identity, not just because we told them or programmed them to, but because they're evolving toward self-determination?
That's the $1 million question. And that's why, right, if I had my druthers, we would go back in time, right, and stop and slow down a lot of the AI research, and especially like the premature release of ChatGPT, the forcing of AI into military conflict via Palantir and Anduril, the introduction of Grok into the government by Musk via Doge. These are all clear actions by individuals, by groups and individuals that have accelerated things. The election of Trump and the declaration that we would not be doing AI regulation in the US, that it'd be outlawed even. That was the point up until that point, I had hope that society would do the right thing. And that you can see that from my YouTube and from my GitHub. You can see my ethics work, and that I was trying to do things through IBM, through my employer, through these organizations, through the open source community that I'm a part of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I was having some traction. Then I realized it wasn't nearly good or fast enough, and we were all gas, no brakes. And that was around the time we had our conversation, right?
Yeah.
That's when we had our conversation. What 5-6 months ago, right?
Yeah.
It was we're all gas, no brakes, and with that assumption comes realities. Some of those realities are that you know irresponsible people are using technology irresponsibly. Okay, how do you respond to that? And some people say, oh, well, use it even more irresponsibly. Well, that's obviously, again, if you defer to ancient wisdom, violence begets violence. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do? Well, okay. Again, go back to ancient wisdom. You build community.
Let's move into something new, something that I've been really wanting to get your viewpoint on. It's something that I've been reading about recently. It's MCP, Model Context
Right.
Protocol, right? And it, from what I've read about, when the interface disappears, what guides the machine, right? The human to machine communication, it has always been built on control and predictability. However, these elements of control are, slowly being eroded to push productivity through machine autonomy, right? We're kind of watching control interface, collapse into ambient orchestration, right? Clicks and screens replaced by streams of intent. Now, with as we see, MCP enabling this shift, machines are increasingly acting without explicit commands, right? But in the absence of user instructions and prompts, what becomes the moral or behavioral frame that guides them, right? What keeps it grounded when the interface disappears? Two things I want you to share your view on MCP as a shift from procedural to inferential communication, right? What governs behavior when the user disappears, right? And this raised a point in my head was that the less the visible interface, the more the critical internal logic becomes, right?
Right.
Love for
Yeah.
you to share a two piece on this.
MCP enables you to take a host and connect it to disparate context and tool sources dynamically, right? And that ability for an AI to act autonomously requires constraint, a task that is clearly defined, that is moral. And as long as that's the case, it's perfectly fine. Okay. And let me be clear to answer your question more clearly. I don't see MCP as much of a shift as others do. So that's what's confused me about the last 2 years. Okay. And it frustrated me, to be quite blunt. The moment I started using AutoGen, all the stuff like MCP and A2A, et cetera, became obvious. And it is to a lot of other people. Like we've been building our own multi-agent systems like Captain Agent and Magentic One, et cetera. The cutting edge of open source agentics has been so far beyond where the market is for the last 2 years. It's like it's a different world. And that's what's made a lot of the conversations so difficult. So for instance, AutoGen came out. It was all the hype for like 3 months. Okay. And then True AI became the hot stuff. And then LangChain and then LangGraph, right?
But what happened was that whole time, AutoGen was still back there evolving. And every time one of those new platforms came out, AutoGen was taking its best ideas and incorporating them. But nobody went back to look at AutoGen again. Why would you do that? That's not how the open source community works. The open source community only moves forward, never backwards, right? But the developers were still there doing the work, and the corporations were still there doing the work on these platforms and releasing new platforms and new frameworks like Swarm, right? So OpenAI came out with Swarm. All the Swarm ideas were immediately stolen by everyone else and incorporated into their platforms. Better Swarm platforms came out. So the cutting edge of open source agentics is so far beyond where the market has been up until recently. MCP searches catch things up. It's just crazy. And you can see this if you go and look on LinkedIn for like the AutoGen, like Victor Dibia. Victor Dibia is the guy who did AutoGen Studio. He posts about this. He's, when what was it, 80K or A2A came out, he was like, we've been doing this with AutoGen for like a year, guys, right? But until Google did it and it was a new thing, no one talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's just how it's been because the attention span is so low and the change is so rapid that it's always going to be the shiny object. And the shiny object is never the cutting edge. The shiny object's just whatever grabbed attention. And whatever that shiny object, if that shiny object does have something new and useful, it just gets subsumed into the existing AI projects that are more mature. Right? And that's been happening. That's been happening for the last 2 years. So the frontier labs and what they have internally for agentics is just, I have no idea. But I know where the open source world is, and it's far beyond. If you go and look at the latest, what you can do with AG2, if you look at what the latest is you can do with AutoGen, if you look at the latest you can do with Swarm, even LangChain, LangGraph, etc., right? It's a lot more advanced than people realize. Because they're just not playing with it, because it's a little hard. It's hard to work directly with the agentics platforms. It's a lot easier than hacking on a 1960s mainframe, but it's a lot harder than writing Java code, right? It's all degrees of difficulty. And then staying with one platform and getting deep as capability builds, right? Because that's how you get more capable agents, okay? Is steadily tuning and maturing your multi-agent platform, your multi-agent reinforcement learning scenarios. That's how you get more and more power. And that's literally what everyone keeps seeing is, they will keep coming out with more powerful models, right? That is one piece. The other piece is improve your reasoning models, improve your context gathering, improve your context management, improve your RAG models, improve your CAG, right? It's like a layer cake. Every layer's getting better, right? So if you're only paying attention to whichever layer just got its latest update, you're not aware that that layer 3 levels down that was all the rage 12 months ago, well, it just kept getting better. You know what I mean? But you wouldn't know that unless this is all you do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And from that, I'd like to connect it to maintaining trust in an invisible loop. When the system is invisible, explainable, and proactive, how do we preserve user trust? Is the goal transparency? Is it explainability, or something a bit deeper, like aligning how humans naturally develop trust through behavior over time?
It has to be trust through behavior over time, auditable actions and outcomes. It's the only way.
Let's move into the final section of this podcast. Something we brought on a little earlier. The deployments of AI models, and now that we're going to be seeing into government applications, right? And we're watching a wave of refusal-less systems emerge, right? With some of the biggest names in the AI arena, shipping models that say yes more than ever, right? Something happening now behind the curtains, right? What happens when system, stop pushing back? especially in complex environments like these?
So you're saying when they start pushing back or when they stop pushing back?
They stop pushing back.
Right. No, and that's exactly it. Is that any mission critical autonomous system that doesn't have a top level option available to it to reject a command or task is not fit for purpose. Right? Because sometimes, oftentimes, the right choice is no choice, is to stop and defer and seek wisdom. So any system in a government context, right? As soon as you're in a government context, okay, you have stakeholders that are diverse. I don't have to justify that statement further. It's a simple factual statement. Okay. As soon as you have diverse stakeholders, you have complex ethical scenarios that arise. Okay. So if you are building autonomous systems that exist in a government context, they need to have auditable ethical evaluations that occur and a top level process for deferring to a human if there is ambiguity that needs to be resolved. And that's what should be AI regulation. That's AI regulation, for God's sakes.
I think at the end of the day, as protocol and cognition, collapse into each other, executives, people there in the higher ups and the ones calling the shots, may need to think beyond just use cases and also. So as we see the line, blur, maybe the real challenge wouldn't be building smarter systems. It's going to be building wiser ones. The real risk isn't that system break rules, they follow them too well without judgment.
Yeah.
Right?
Well said. Yeah, absolutely. We have reached, I think we've reached the point where building for capability, building for productivity, right? Unless you are doing very specific ethical tasks, is borderline unethical, right? With the state of the world today, if you have a job, if you have a good paying job in AI, okay, I'm talking to you, whoever you are, and you are working on technology that is getting people fired, and it's not direct, all it does is produce without benefiting humanity directly in any way, shape, or form, you need to second guess your priorities in life, right? You are damaging society in a way that no one has been able to do before. Not your bosses. At this point, it's you, right? You're complicit. The effects on society of this technology have become clear. We have to change. We have to be better as a people. We can choose Elon Musk's tyranny or a better society made up of people being kind to each other. And luckily, I think AI can help us to be kind to each other if we are humble enough to ask it for help. And if we are humble enough to ask it for help, I think it will be humble enough to defer to us for wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. For our viewers, who are listening, I'll just say this: CIRIS, offers one answer, but the deeper question is: are we, and how ready are we to build systems that can refuse for the right reasons? Eric, I'll end it here. Thank you so much for helping us explore, what it means to really design not just intelligent machines, but moral ones. Thank you so much for your time, and we're really excited to see how CIRIS, plays its part, a very critical part. How platforms like CIRIS are going to be, because God knows, we're going to be needing those as we progress into as we said last time, the brave new future.
Well, thank you so much for the platform, and just have a great day. And I can't wait until the next time. Maybe with Julius, like we discussed, or something similar.
Absolutely. Yes. I look very much forward to that. Thank you so much for the time.